Welcome to What is Going Ohms, Transforming Your Destiny by Decoding Your Emotional DNA, in which hosts Sandie Sedgbeer and Judy Wilkins-Smith help you unravel and reframe the unconscious ancestral patterns that may be secretly limiting your success in life, love, finance, and career.
Hello, and welcome to episode 4 of Transforming Your Destiny by Decoding Your Emotional DNA. And today we're going to be focusing on how our emotional DNA impacts every relationship we have. So if you wonder why you don't get on with certain members of your family, or why you have difficulty finding or keeping a life partner, or how to improve the relationships that you have with friends, children, and those around you, stay tuned. Judy Wilkins-Smith, founder of System Dynamics for Organizations and Individuals, and an expert in decoding emotional and organizational DNA, joins me once more to share the secrets of breaking the limiting cycles, resolving long-standing issues, and transforming the perpetuating patterns that have been generationally transmitted via your ancestral DNA. Judy Wilkins-Smith. Judy, welcome back.
Thanks, Sandie. It's lovely to be with you again.
So, Judy, you say that our relationships are our keys to success, flexibility, growth, leadership, deep inner understanding, fulfillment, and happiness. And they're also hotbeds of systemic patterns. So, tell us more about that.
They are. They're really what I would call hotbeds of clues. So absolutely, our relationships affect everything in the world around us. And that is colored by what we've been told growing up. Be good, be kind, be meek, be mild. Don't be greedy. Always let the other person speak first. Don't get too smart. People don't like smart people. So our relationships are based on our primary relationship, which is our family system. And those relationships are really based on many, many generations of patterns. So we inherit a number of relationship patterns and then pretend they're ours and wonder why we're so frustrated because they don't feel right.
That sounds very familiar to me. So you say that we all trigger and are triggered by others who represent how we do or do not connect. So obviously this has a lot to do with what you've just said, but tell me more about that particular piece, because it sounds like we're pulling people in to our field who can hold a mirror up to us.
Yes, I would say the universe is elegant. What you don't solve in one, you're going to solve in the other. So when you don't solve a problem you have with a sibling, you're probably going to pull a sibling, in inverted commas, into your work situation or some other situation you're in, because it's going to keep coming around and around until you look at it. It's offering to help you to shift.
So how do we identify all of the many ways, and I'm sure there are many, many ways, that we're caught in this system?
You know, the easiest way to identify it is when somebody makes me angry. No, they're really, or somebody upsets me, or somebody irritates me. They're really not. You're getting triggered by something that they do that reflects something that's incomplete in the system. And so all the time, the system is very elegantly giving you all of the clues that you could need. It's going, hey, look, this one doesn't work. Hey, look, this isn't working over here. Oh, goodness, look how angry you get here. And when you look at that, many times the places where you're angry, upset, irritated are the very places that you're mimicking from generations before. Well, you know, you shouldn't do that. Anytime you hear a shouldn't, a wouldn't, a couldn't, or a shoulda, woulda, coulda, you're probably sitting with a representative for what's incomplete for you. So if you pay attention there, not only is it telling you what's not working, it's also telling you what's trying to stop so that you can change it and make it your own instead of faithfully drinking the multi-generational Kool-Aid.
So this is relating back to something that we've discussed in previous episodes, which is that there are three important parts to the emotional DNA in all the systems, the part we inherit, the part we perpetuate, and the part we create. So give us a little brief overview of that and how it ties into, especially, this particular arena of relationships.
Okay, so inherit, perpetuate, change, right? Those are your 3 steps. So when we inherit, what we're looking at is mom was depressed from the day she got married. Me too. The minute I got married, it was just dreadful. And so I perpetuated. I don't just inherit it, but I decide that I am the same. In our family, we are all this way is very much the perpetuation of a pattern. When we decide to change it, somebody looks at it and goes, this is not working for me. I don't want to do that anymore. And they go, I've watched my mother struggle for years and years. I'm sorry, I'm not doing that. I am going to be the joy bringer. And right there, they're changing the emotional DNA around.
Right. So give me some more examples of how this might play out in people's lives. I mean, I'm sure there's some very common ones.
Absolutely. We see generations of women who lose their men, or generations of men who all have drinking problems. Why? Because the original event and its ramifications or the results of it have not been explored and resolved. So they're out there pretty much like flowers in the wind saying to the bee, pollinate me, I'm just going to keep waving. So we see these generations of women losing the men. We may see men who only marry successful women like their fathers did, or women who marry men who struggle financially like their fathers did. Maybe mom wears the pants and dad brings home the bacon. And then we also see things like individuals who feel unworthy of a relationship but can't explain why until we go looking. And we realize or recognize that somewhere in the system was this event that happened to their parent or their grandparent and induced these feelings, or they decided to choose the feelings more accurately of I'm unworthy. That was a conclusion they came to. And then they passed those echoes in sentences and actions down to mom, who then passed them down to child, or down to dad, who passed them down to child. So now you have a child or a client who says, I can't have a relationship because I'm not worthy, but it in fact isn't that child and it's not that relationship. So they've clicked 2 pieces together that don't belong. So epigenetically, what you would say is that the event has impacted those beyond the original member who was affected and formed a pattern that creates what we call a hidden loyalty to the originating member and to the event and to the subsequent pattern. So now they fall into that pattern and it feels oh so familiar that why would we even resist it, because that's just the way I am.
I can understand that you might inherit an attitude, you might inherit, the emotions, the feelings, but actually repeating the same incidents, why do we go that far?
If the incident itself is traumatic enough, let's take something like war or even an accident. In fact, I had a client whose son was a safety expert. So this one is beautiful. He was a safety expert, and in fact, he was known in relationships for being the safe guy. Why? When we had a look, mom was driving her car down the road. She just met dad. She was happy as a lark, or the guy who would then become dad, happy as a lark, and this kid ran out in front of her car and she killed the kid. So what happens is she has her children. The son has an accident, and it destroys her, by the way. She doesn't ever drive again. The son has an accident, but loves cars. So notice the antidote sitting right next to what's happened. Loves cars and becomes the safety expert on some of the racing cars. So what's happening is the event that's there will show up in some form to trigger the same thing, but ask for a different result.
Wow. So as long as this is unconscious, as long as we're not dealing with it, then in a way we're destroying our relationships before they even begin.
They don't have a chance. You're right. You're absolutely right. And in fact, if you have someone in a relationship, perhaps like a girl who is very tied to dad, a daddy's girl, or a mama's boy. Mama's boys are ones that we see more sometimes, where mama just has to ring the bell and son comes running. And everybody's going, why? Well, because his first relationship was with his mother and he hasn't completed with his father. So that relationship is incomplete or broken. So now he's standing in his father's place, which means he's out of order. And every time mom calls, dad comes, only it's not dad, it's the son. So we start to do all sorts of things by taking on pieces that don't belong to us.
It makes us sound like we're puppets.
We are puppets to the system if we don't understand the system. I always look at it this way. It's not as much that we are puppets to the system. We are in deep love with the system. We are deeply loyal to the system. In fact, there's a book about it by Stefan Hausner called Even If It Costs Me My Life. Mom, Dad, I will do anything to belong here, even if it costs me my life.
Wow. So it runs that deep.
It is incredibly deep. You will see in some of the South American countries or poorer countries, let's put it that way, poorer countries, where a mother beats her child because she can't look after it, beats the child, and it's dying and it's still saying, Mom, Mom, we want to belong.
Yeah.
It is a deep soul connection.
Yeah, you do see in a lot of families where children are abused that the children, will protect their parents to the end.
Absolutely, they will, because think about it this way. Two things. There is a deep, deep, deep soul tie to a parent, so much so that if I cannot connect with my parent overtly and strongly, I will find any way to make that happen, even if it means I connect in the pain. So if I don't have something strong and happy, I will then latch onto a painful aspect of that parent and quite unconsciously repeat that.
Well, given that, 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8 great-grandparents, etc., we must inherit a hell of a lot of stuff. Is it likely that we could deal with it all in one lifetime?
It is likely that you can deal with a lot, because a lot of what's inherited isn't just unique to mom and dad, although of course we all have unique events, right? But bear in mind that these are the events that create change, the significant ones, because otherwise we'd go daft. But it's the significant ones that create the words, the thoughts, the feelings, and the actions that create the patterns that become the truth, only they're not. So it's looking at the ones that are really creating limitations that are important. Well, 2 of them. One that creates limitations and the other one that creates strengths. The strengths, of course, we want to build on. But when we look at the ones that create limitations in our lives, that is really a huge doorway for us to walk through and say, I choose life, I choose joy, I choose success, I choose love, I choose to connect, I choose to be in relationship, I choose to be able to connect with others in ways that my predecessors could not. And as you take on the bigger ones, the other ones tend to settle a little bit too.
Okay, so you change one thing and then you get a cascade of changes.
Absolutely. Really. Change one. Think about it. You literally take one. It's like genetic coding. If you just change one leg, you change everything about that way, the way that gene is expressed. This is no different. The minute you change one thought, one feeling, one action, you no longer have a predictable future and you aren't living in your ancient history anymore. Now you're creating the future. Now, does that mean you've solved everything? No, but the minute you become aware of that one, then anything else that creates a limitation is something you're going to notice, because now you've clicked what the formula is. Notice the limitation, understand the origin, and even if you can't identify it, understand that it's there, choose different. and choose it consciously. And then it's not enough to choose it. You have to say yes to your choice and invest in it with a great deal of what we call the elevated emotion, the joy, the love, the gratitude, the thankfulness, all of those, the ones that keep you going in the direction of what you want to create.
Yeah. In previous episodes, we've talked about how all relationships and systems rely on the interaction of three basic principles for balance and harmony. And they are belonging, balance of give and receive, and order. Can you tell us and give us some examples of how these three principles can play out in relationships? Because I think when people hear examples, it's much easier to recognise what's going on in our own lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So belonging is more difficult than it sounds. People go, oh yeah, well, belonging, I do or I don't belong in my family. So first thing is, newsflash, you belong in your family. You cannot not belong. When you were born, you belonged, period. You may not feel like you belong or want to, but you belong, and you have a very specific place. Now, that's the easy version, but there are other pieces. Many of us may belong in our families by suffering together. We may all be hoarders. We may all be terrified of money. We may all belong by suffering in relationships. We may all belong by everybody being depressed. So when you're in a situation, you want to look at, how am I belonging? Is it serving? Now, here's an important piece. Is it serving life? And more importantly, is it serving the biggest version of my life? If not, is the belonging here the healthiest and the highest it could be? You also get belonging with, we are all architects, doctors, lawyers, we're all kind to each other. We all hug. These are other ways to belong. These are ways that connect and grow and nurture. So you really just want to look at, is the way that I belong in my family nurturing for me? Here's the next trap. People say, well, it's not serving me, so I'm not going to belong anymore. You're dead. Not so much, because the minute you reject the family, you reject your access to everything that you need. So it's not that you want to reject belonging to the family or belonging in the family. It's that you want to change the way you do so that it fills your heart, fills your head, fills your gut. Because when you do that, not only will you grow you'll grow your compassion and understand why the system may be the way that it is. And you won't understand it by saying, well, I'm going to be different, you can all suffer. You will actually understand it by saying, I'm going to be the way shower. Watch me. Does that make sense for belonging?
Well, it does, but tell me what happens, and give me some examples of if we never felt that we belonged, if we didn't, if we were adopted, or if we were sent away, or somebody else brought us up. I mean, what sort of behaviours would you expect to see in that kind of circumstance?
Wow, now you've opened a big can of worms, because let's have a look at adoptees. They're very interesting. What you can see in systemic work is a couple of things. First of all, you can see the extremes. Either you see somebody who flunks at everything they do because the inner sentence is something along the lines of, it doesn't matter what I do, I'll never be enough to belong. You get the other side, which is the superachievers. I will do and do and do and do and do enough to show you why I'm good enough to belong. Now, for the others, the ones who are flunking, what you've got to show them is you already belong. You already belong. And you can choose to find the ways that you belong. And there are so many. I have brown hair, I have blue eyes, I have long legs. There are many ways in which, even if you're an adoptee, if you look at yourself in the mirror and you look at the family you're adopted into, you will see that you also belong somewhere else. So you have two ways to belong. So you have more, not less, which is pretty awesome. With the superachievers, if you ask them, often there's a teeny little bit of anxiety or sadness because they know that they have to keep striving to do enough so that they feel like they can belong. But they're gifts in their own way. Because when they finally get that they always belonged anyway, these are the ones who could tell other people, I choose family. I belong in a number of families. If I can do it, you can do it. I belong in my world. And they become people who create places of belonging. So these are all wonderful gifts.
So tell me now about, how when the balance of give and receive is out of balance, how that shows up in relationships. Give us some
So
examples.
in relationships, you may see that one partner gives too much and the other one may need a lot of attention or is very needy and just has to have it all the time. Maybe the women are all high maintenance and the men are distant and cold, or mom gives up her career so dad can have a strong one, and then dad leaves. And by the way, dad sometimes will leave because now he's grown up and mom stayed the same, which is a little unfair, but what then happens is mom turns around and says to her daughter, never trust a man, they take everything and leave you with nothing. Well, you could do that. Or as mom, you could turn around and say, dad left to go and do his thing. I'm going to turn around and see what I can create. And then she doesn't pass that on to her daughter or son. She says, dad had to do his thing and it made me grow up too. Here's what I've learned. And you don't have to do it the same way. Two people can have a career. So there are so many ways for that to play out. But if one gives too much and one takes too much, what you can see is a building of resentment on both sides because the one feels too big and the other one feels too small. And sometimes when one feels too small, they may go and have an affair because they need to find a place where they can be big again. And when one is too big, in other words, they're forgiving or they're saintly because they keep forgiving, they may chase others away because others feel like they cannot come together in that relationship. The other one is too big, they're too small.
What about, you do say that sometimes, it takes time to achieve balance, and trying
Absolutely.
constantly can actually exhaust people. What strategies are there that people can employ to make it easier to begin to achieve some balance?
Well, so here's the thing. If you have one, for example, who's the breadwinner, the other one may well be the heart in the home. That's good balance. They're actually the CEO at home, which means they're doing an awful lot to make sure that everything works. If one is perhaps physically challenged and cannot give as much as the one who is physically capable, the one who's physically challenged may be the kindest, nicest, sweetest, most considerate, may be the one who looks out for, may be the good ear. There are so many ways to balance for that. We look at you doing this tick, I'm doing that tick, and then we go, like you said, it's a bit of a tick-tock. If we keep doing that, we exhaust ourselves. But as humans, we forget that there is a long game. Sometimes you may find that dad was a breadwinner and he went gung-ho and he got everything sorted out, and one day he fell off the ladder. And suddenly it was mom's turn to step up. You don't know. So sometimes it's to look for the balance in the ways that you can build together, but it's also to understand that in time, she may be the one who's a little stronger. She may be the one who takes the lead while dad sits back. There is a long game.
So what you're saying, what I'm hearing you say is that, we may look for things that we may not have valued before in somebody and see that,
Absolutely.
that is an asset. That is a way that, things begin to balance out. He does this, but look what she does over there.
Absolutely. And this is something that I think we often miss in divorces, where the one says, well, I did all the work. Yes, I got all the children to all of their soccer practices. I took the children to all of their school stuff. I made sure that the house was clean. There was always good, warm food on the table. That's strong assets.
Well,
so there are ways to
interesting...
not ever feel out of balance.
That's an interesting one, because I know so many women who have been, homemakers, brought up the children, do the laundry, do the food shopping, balance the accounts, do all of that so that the guy can go off and do his one job. And those women never feel that they are doing enough. They still feel that they don't, it's not an equal partnership, because they're not bringing home the money.
We made it about money only, but what we didn't realize is there are many currencies, and there are many systemic currencies: kindness, relationships, money, love, value. There are many currencies. And when a woman gets that, Hellinger used to always talk about when a woman agrees to, and now I'm saying woman, this could be men too, because we have this both ways in society. But when the one perhaps who is staying at home agrees to that career, or as Hellinger would have said, agrees to that fate, there is something that is born from that. They're not doing it in reaction to or because that's my lot. They embrace that as a career, as a calling, as a path. And these are the ones who you see who are very, very happy. They do not see themselves as lesser than. They know my holding it here has enabled that to take place.
Yeah, well, I think you said a really good word there, that many women who feel this way feel that it's, doesn't matter how much they do, it's still not as good because it's not money. But if they start looking at it in terms of currency, I think that might give them a way forward to begin to achieve that balance. Yeah. We're going to take a short break now, Judy. You're listening to What Is Going On. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, and you're listening to episode 4 in a powerfully transformative 7-episode web series co-created with internationally renowned organisational and family patterns expert and motivational speaker Judy Wilkins-Smith. And this month, we're looking at the hotbeds of systemic patterns, our relationships DNA. We'll be back with more game-changing information on relationships DNA after the break.
The future of internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio, IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
Vox Novus, the new voice. Vox Novus, the new dimension. Vox Novus, thought and movement leaders who will share from their experience and offer tools to help us navigate our rapidly changing world. My name is Victor Furman. Join me every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio for Vox Novus, the new voice.
Mental health. Most people think it means mental illness. Most people are wrong. Mental health doesn't apply to just some of us. It applies to everyone. We're all susceptible to anxiety and depression. They're human conditions. And no person should ever feel embarrassed, ashamed, or be discriminated against for being human. Cracked the podcast strips away the shame, fear, and stigma by expanding the conversation into areas less often visited. From brain and body chemistry, hormones, food, nutrition, trauma, and the microbiome, to pharmaceutical drugs, psychedelic substances, meditation, visionary experiences, and spiritual awakenings. Cracked the podcast will explore them all, including the notion that, for many, breakdown can be the beginning of breakthrough. For in the words of singer-songwriter Leonard Cohen, there is a crack in everything. It's where the light gets in. Cracked the podcast, slaying the dragons of mental health. Join co-hosts Sandie Sedgbeer and Rebecca Shaper on the first and third Thursday of every month at 12 noon Eastern Time.
Coping-19, brought to you by CDC and the Ad Council.
If you're feeling increasingly lonely right now, you're not alone. It's totally normal. Even though we may not be able to get together in person, connecting virtually with friends and family still gives you a chance to interact with people and may help raise your spirits. Join a virtual book club, set up group text chats, or online video coffee breaks with coworkers.
Find more self-care and coping tips at coping-19.org.
Welcome back. Judy Wilkins-Smith, you talk about there being 3 patterns of giving and taking in relationships, and they're labelled fasting, helping, and full exchange. Can you run through those for me?
I can absolutely do that. So we do have these really interesting patterns, right? The fasting relationship is the one in which I refuse to welcome what life offers. Rather than risking feeling obliged or obligated, the faster is the one who frees themselves from need and sometimes sees themselves as superior or special. I don't need, it's fine, you take it, I'm good. The upside of that is they feel like they're independent, they're beholden to nobody, and they're completely in control, which, by the way, we all know comes from somewhere there was a terrible event and someone was out of control. The downside of that is that they can remain very uninvolved in life, uninvolved in relationships, afraid, living in shadows. They can't take what life is offering them. We often say they're too afraid to eat the meat of life or take in the sweetness of life. And this is then carried over into their relationships as well. Somebody says, oh, I wanted to give you a gift. And they go, no, it's fine. I'm good. I'm fine. And then, of course, in the balance of giving and taking in relationships, they will not take from their partners. They try to change their partners, but they stay the same. They become superior and elevate themselves maybe like their parents did or their parents' partners did, and they become just unavailable. So that's the fasting pattern. Does that make sense?
It does, I know. I can identify a few people there.
Oh, I'm sure. So then we get to helping, right? So helping is one I see a lot of. In fact, I watch for it at my events. I always have a look to see who's going to get up and offer the Kleenex, who's going to get up and give somebody a pat on the back, who's going to be the reaching out one. Because by attending to the needs of others all the time, what they're doing is accumulating currency. I've taken care of you, I've taken care of you, I've taken care of you, I've taken care of you. It's almost as though they're saying, if I take care of you, will you see me and understand that I also have needs? But they don't want to be seen as greedy, so they keep taking care of and they keep taking care of. Here's the problem with that. The day they decide they need something, often what they have is a very big need when they decide to cash out their currency. And it sends everybody running in the opposite direction. But these are your helpers, the helper syndrome people. They often have very poor boundaries. If there's a problem, they're there. Whether it's their problem or not their problem, they're there. And their approach is destructive to relationships. They keep trying to help the needy one. They find fix-it projects. They find DIYs. They need to be innocent. They've got to be superior. They can't take from the partner. They keep giving and giving and giving. So they keep putting the Band-Aids on while they're developing a need for open heart surgery themselves. And I'm sure you've seen it because these are the ones that say, she's a saint. She's always in the community doing something. She's exhausted.
Yes.
These are your helpers.
But you can get a bit of both, can't you? I mean, I know people I could say are helpers and they're the other kind, the fasters as well.
Yeah, absolutely. In both cases, it's like, if I keep giving, at some point you're going to see me. But that's not how it works. You see a lot of good girls and good boys in this category. And then they wonder why they're not getting what they want in life. Well, hello, you're so busy giving to everybody else that when people try to give to you or they try to participate with you and you keep saying no, they go, oh, well, she's got it and I'm not big enough to belong in her world.
What about full exchange?
Full exchange is beautiful. So I have somebody who comes to visit me and they bring me flowers and I go, that's nice. You know, when I see that person again, I have this book I want to give them. And so next time I give them the book and they go, oh, that was so kind, I get a hug. Well, I've given the book, I've received a hug. I love the hugs. Now the hugs become a thing. So now every time we see each other, there's a tradition of giving a hug and we build. What can I tell you about you that works for me, or what's good about you? What do you tell me? We're nourishing each other all the time. We're not complacent around it, and because we do that, it creates an energy that's really, it's a very buzzy energy. We call that chemistry. We get together and just good things happen. Yes, we built that. It didn't just happen. We built that. And if we keep doing that, because there are two ways to build chemistry. One is in the wound, which you don't want to do. But if it's in a full exchange, we keep giving and that relationship grows. And this is where you see the 25, 30, 40-year relationships. And that's not just in personal, that's in business, where people feel needed and the ROI, return on interaction, is high. People will engage in a relationship.
So how do we start building couples relationships systemically?
Yeah, it's always good to know what you're doing that doesn't work, right? But what do we do?
Yeah.
So what do? We take our full place. Don't expect somebody to complete you. Every time I hear that, I go, you just put that all out there for somebody else to fix. Not a good idea. Choose the ones you want to be with. Don't need them, choose them. Take our full place, because if you take your full place, surprise, surprise, you're in order. You're coming from where you belong, and you're coming from how you belong. You're in order. The other person doesn't have to do that. So now you've got a much more dynamic relationship. Don't expect your partners to fill gaps and needs. Teach yourself to have a look what those are and resolve them. Now, I will tell you that in systemic work, they say you're often with the right partner when they can take you to your darkest places. But they don't mention you're often in a relationship with the right partner when they can also take you to your highest places. So learn to celebrate together. Learn to find what is beautiful in the world. Have common goals. Sometimes we would say, maybe you have a joint bank account. Now, not everybody wants that, but maybe one joint bank account. What are the assets that you're building together? Is it a house? Is it a home? Is it children? Is it puppies or fur babies? What are the goals that we have in our lives? And that goes to things like vacations, traveling, expectations, lifestyles, the kind of life we want. Are we building it together? In other words, are we both putting into the river? Are we both filling the bucket? And can we be fully present in those relationships? Because when we can, we find joy in each other. And then the other one, of course, is as you're building a relationship, of course you're going to notice all the things that don't work. But for goodness sake, start noticing how many of the things do work and how they're trying to serve you.
Looking at one of your training manuals that I've been privileged to have a peek at, you give some wonderful little pieces about relationships, if a man is in a relationship with a woman who has children, what are his needs? And women are closer to life and death when she gives birth, and it creates weight for her. Can you share a few of those with us? Different ways to build weight?
Absolutely, yes. So if you're talking about ways to build weight in couples, It goes to the having children. It goes to building something together that has the feeling of a child. So if you don't have children, what has the feeling of a child? What is a project that you can birth together? Sometimes a strong sexual connection or a strong heart connection. Maybe you're amassing that fortune. But you were right when you talked about the man and the woman. Now, these days, this is ambiguous. It could go either way. But if one is bringing in all the money, that is a weight. If one is providing the children, that is a weight. And you want to be careful that you don't overweight too much in one direction, because that can cause feelings of insecurity, or it can cause feelings of irritation and frustration at always being the provider. So if one is the breadwinner, what is the other one? If one is the heart, what is the other one? Is that one strength? Then simple things like, I'm going to go back to the old, not old, but traditional ways where it was husband and wife. If a husband had the home or provided the home, the wife created the home. Now, it was always difficult if the wife was then had a father who was very wealthy, who owned the business and gave her a home, because then the husband would feel or could feel like, where is my weight? And so you've got to be aware in all of those to ask each other, are we carrying equal weight? And not, well, you're not doing enough. It's, do you have enough to feel like you're enough? Do I have enough to feel like I'm contributing? What do we each want to add that is extra, that brings us joy? And it's not always money. So these are the ways that you build as a couple.
We live in a world where there are so many, second marriages, third marriages, etc. Talk a little bit about when people, come into a new relationship like that, when somebody may move into a family where there are children and they didn't have children before, or where they're not their children. I can imagine that they are also places and arrangements that could very easily fall apart if one hasn't looked at one's patterns.
Absolutely. And if you don't know how systems work, you can really butt heads with this, because so often, and I mean, one would understand that. I'm going to go traditional for a minute. Let's say it's husband and wife get divorced, husband remarries, new wife comes in. There are a number of dynamics to watch out for. First of all, if there are children, if you simply look at it this way, who came first? The wife came first, and then the children. So they all have a place. The wife will always be the first wife. The children come after the wife. That is the order of the system. Now, if you then have a second wife who comes in who says, you better pay me attention first and then the children, and exclude that wife person, I don't want her here, she's set herself up for a number of ouches. Number one, life and love flows first to the children. From the mother and the father, first to the children. And then what else there is belongs to the next one. It's not that she's getting leftovers by any means. She's in a different position in the system. If she is smart and she looks at all of that and she gives the first wife her place and the children their place, and then she connects with the husband, they won't be confused. She won't feel less than. And here is the piece if she doesn't. Now, there are two things. If the man doesn't give the first wife her place, he disparages her, he disses her, whatever it looks like. The second wife knows that she has a high possibility of having that happen to her, and so she may not be able to get all the way close. And then if they both exclude, or if one of them excludes the first wife, you may sometimes find, so I want to explain this almost slowly so that people really get it. If you have the husband and second wife who are together and they diss or disparage the first wife or exclude her, and they have children, one of those children may get between the two of them. And the reason for that is, quite unconsciously, but distinctly, the child knows it owes its life to the first woman who stepped aside. Without that woman's place and her taking herself away, this child wasn't born.
Interesting. I don't think many people look at it that way.
They don't. But when they do, and I've seen it, when they do, when everybody has their place with all their warts and all of their irritations, and we know that mom can be irritating, but she belongs there and she will always be your mother, and she is the first, there is a whole lot less tension because there is also respect for place. Now, on the other hand, if mom's being a bit of a thing and really going at the second wife, she needs to understand she is blocking her own ability to create a relationship with someone else because she is too focused on something else over here that is not going to bring her connection.
This could almost be a how-to book on creating great relationships, couldn't it?
Oh my goodness. Sandie, you say that I'd love to write the how-to book on how to divorce systemically, how to do multiple or multi-families systemically, because it would make it so helpful. I know when I do this at events and people say, yes, but I'm part of a blended family. And I say to them, how often are you confused? All the time. Okay. So then we set up the whole family in front of them, so that they can see exactly where they belong and how they came in. And often you'll see somebody from the next marriage a sibling who's butting heads with a sibling from the first marriage. And if these two look at each other, what they're actually saying is, in my nuclear system, I am an eldest. And the other one is saying, and I am also an eldest. And when they know that, there is more ability to respect and more ability for blended families to have strong relationships.
Well, I mean, I think you should write it. There's plenty of how-to books on single parenting, on, parenting a second family, second marriages, etc. But nobody has ever explained it as a system, and the system having an order. Not that I've come across anyway.
Probably not. Now, I would tell you my big heart's desire, I would write it, because it is a good one to write, but is to actually be able to demonstrate it widely. Because here's the piece. We spoke about the belonging, and we spoke about balance of give and receive. We didn't speak about order.
No, we didn't.
And order is very, very important. You see this, one of the biggest ways that you see order is when people boss other people around, or they keep trying to organize people. What they're doing is they're actually saying, I don't know where I belong. But if I keep putting you all in your place and you take your place, then I can find mine. And we know that when you come from your correct order, it means you know where you belong so that you can know how to belong. And often when we work this piece at an event and I'm doing it live, I literally watch people exhale and go, I finally get it. This is my place. I don't need to go and do all of those pieces over there. I don't need to be the fix-it. I've been driving myself crazy trying to get things organized. Here, I'm just me. I know what belongs to me and I know what I can pass on.
It's interesting because we often read about, psychologists are doing these studies on, the family order. Are you the eldest? Are you the youngest? Are you the middle child? Here's what, your personality is going to be like. But nobody talks about how you can resolve those issues that come with that order.
Well, there is also, I'm going to say again, there is a particular exercise that I do that is directly focused on order. It's experiential. It's an interactive one, and every single person gets not just to see, but to feel what it is like to stand in absolutely their place and their place only. And if you watch people doing that, because often they're taking other positions, there is that whole exhale that happens because they get to see empty places and empty spaces and those who came before and what that feels like and those who came after and what that feels like. And yeah, that is a study. If I were to get with a group who would study it with me, people actually feel it. And then when they're in their place, they can relate so much easier because they're not trying to create a relationship from a foreign base. It's their authentic base.
So you could probably read quite well, people's personalities and modus operandi when they tell you their position in the family unit.
I can, and it depends on many, many pieces. What is your position in the family unit? How many before you? How many after you? Other nuances that there are so many, this would be a program on its own, but so many nuances that will tell you why you feel like you don't belong, why life may be too heavy, why you're carrying all of the burden, why you can't quite fit, why you never seem to be able to get what you need. There are so many, and those all govern your relationships because you're telling yourself things about it all the time. Do I need to shrink so that somebody else who needs it more can take that bigger bite of the apple? Do I always stand back? Do I take care of? Why do I take care of? It's a huge piece. And when we understand that piece, we understand so much about the incredible us and the things that we will do to belong, even if we shrink ourselves or have it at some stages to inflate ourselves to carry it. It's a remarkable process.
I can imagine. Judy, in the short time that we have left, could you give us a piece of homework? Can you give us an exercise or something that we can do which will give us some kind of aha in relation to something that we've been talking about today?
Okay, so my quick question for you would be, do you want to understand your relationships? Let me think about that. So if I were going to say to you, have a look at your relationships, here's your piece of homework. What I would say to you is take a relationship you struggle with. Write it down on a piece of paper. Write down all the things that you tell yourself about that relationship. Then write down all the things that you tell yourself about the others in that relationship and about yourself in the relationship. And when you're finished with that, write down what it is that you would like to stop or have differently. And then write down what it is that you would like to start. Because if you do those two pieces, you will also notice that what you want to stop is the multigenerational limiting pattern that no longer serves. And what you want to start is, in fact, your addition, your unique emotional DNA that will shape the system going forward.
That's a good one, actually. Very good one. We're almost out of time, Judy. So we'll continue this conversation next month in relationship to work, career, leadership, the things we do outside the family. Before we go, can you tell us what you've got coming up in the near future?
Absolutely. September the 1st at 7:30 Central Time, I will be having an open Zoom evening so that people can ask all the questions that they want to ask me. I find there are a lot of those questions in our world right now. Happy to answer them from a systemic point of view. And then, of course, October the 3rd, I will be doing the virtual emotional DNA. And October 28th, 29th, 30th, and 31st is in person at Disney, and that is Money DNA. And Money DNA, you will find, is not just about the money.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not. Okay, Judy Wilkins-Smith, thank you. It's been very enlightening, as always, and I look forward to the next episode.
Sandie, it's always lovely to spend time with you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Judy. Okay, so if you want to know more, if you want to join Judy for that free open evening, go to judywilkins-smith.com. That's it for this week. We'll be back next month with another episode 5 of Transforming Your Destiny by Decoding Your Emotional DNA, and that will be on October the 7th. In the meantime, I'll be back with a regular edition of What is Going On at the same time next week. Till then, it's goodbye from me.